Welcome to Speaking Holistically, the podcast that explores the power of alternative medicine, natural healing, and homeopathic solutions to help you achieve true wellness. Each week, Dr. Jen and Amy G dive into the world of holistic health, discussing researched, time-tested remedies with expert insights from Dr. Jen, as well as real-life stories from patients to empower you to take charge of your health. So if you're ready to embrace a more natural path to wellness, let's start speaking holistically, because true healing begins from within. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Speaking Holistically. I'm your co-host, Amy G. I'm here with my amazing co-host, Dr. Jen. And today we're doing a common health concerns episode on a pretty big topic, which is blood pressure.
Yeah, so blood pressure, I'm going to clarify some things on here just to make it easy, because there's a lot of misinformation running around about blood pressure, and the levels have changed since I was in school to now. This is definitely a huge subject for those of us who are part of the aging population. When you're younger, you don't really worry about it, and then as you get older, you're getting told that your blood pressure's high and you don't know why or whatever the situation is. So we're going to talk about high blood pressure and low blood pressure, because there's things that you can do for both of them. But the biggest thing I tell people is, according to medical physiology textbooks like Guyton, 95% of blood pressure is controlled by the kidneys, not the heart. So most people think it's their heart is the issue, and then that's when they freak out and they get feared into taking a pharmaceutical that potentially they don't need if they manage their lifestyle. And not to say that nobody needs blood pressure meds. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying to stop it. I'm not saying any of that, but I'm just saying I need people to understand more about what actually goes on. So you've got the systolic and the diastolic. The systolic is the first number, and both of those measure pressure in the arteries. The systolic measures the pressure when the heart is actually beating, it's actually squeezing. The diastolic is the pressure between the beats. So I had a patient come in a couple days ago, and her blood pressure was 221 over 150. So that's a little bit high. And that was actually with medication.
Oh my God.
So there were some things that we ended up doing to work with her to get the blood pressure down, because whatever she was taking, it wasn't working. And she also said, well, I probably made the mistake of drinking 3 cups of coffee. I'm like, well, that could be part of the problem too, is the coffee. So yeah, and I mean, 1 cup of coffee may not be a big deal, and it might be, because everybody's different. The genetics are different. The way their bodies are functioning are different. You know, we all know that coffee is a diuretic. So the kidneys control the blood pressure 95% of the time. They have sodium potassium pumps that keep the electrolytes balanced. So there's a whole host of checks and balances in the body to try to keep us alive, really. So one thing that I tell people to do for high blood pressure is to support the kidneys better. Drink more water, put Himalayan salt or other electrolytes in it. And people go, well, I can't have salt. It causes my blood pressure to get high. I'm like, well, table salt, NaCl, Morton's, that's probably true, or any other kind of salt that's in processed foods can absolutely do that. But real salt with other minerals in it, like Himalayan salt has 80 something minerals in it. So if you can add that, sometimes that will actually bring the blood pressure down. Now, everybody's a little bit different, but that's a huge one. I also use potassium gluconate quite a bit. And if anyone has any kind of gouty issues, we'll add some pantothenic acid or B5. So that will also help the kidneys. But the one thing I have people sending me in their blood pressure readings that they do at home, and it'll be like 2 minutes later, a minute and a half later, 2 minutes later, and that will absolutely give you the wrong readings. So the best way to check your blood pressure, whether you have an arm cuff or wrist cuff, is to make sure you've been seated for 5 minutes, you've gone pee, you don't have any stress in your body, and then you go ahead and do it. But your arm should be at heart height. So I had another patient contact me freaking out that they had high blood pressure, found out that he had a cuff, for his wrist, and he had his wrist laying in his lap. So yes, his blood pressure was much higher than it actually was. So once he figured that out and put it at heart height, blood pressure came back perfectly fine. So a lot of times when you go to the cardiologist or your GP or whoever you're going to, and they're going to check your blood pressure, what do? You get the nurse or whoever's helping out. They go, come on back, Mr. So-and-so. and you walk from the waiting room. Now you've been sitting there waiting for an hour and a half. You're pissed off because you've been waiting so long, first of all, right? I mean, let's be real, right? So
No,
you
it's
get
true.
back there and they sit you down and they put the cuff on you and they check your blood pressure. Oh, your blood pressure's high. You're like, and then that freaks you out even more. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, you should be seated somewhere for 5 minutes, relaxed, calm before anything gets checked. So they call that white coat syndrome when you're nervous to be at the doctor's office. But there's also an aspect of it, of the physicality of it, of not being able to sit long enough prior to having that checked.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. So if people can remember that, like you can ask them to go do something else and come back. Not sure how that's going to work out for you, but that's the right way to do it. So you should be sitting for 5 minutes between tests too. So if you're checking it and you want to check it again, you cannot check it right away. You have to wait another 5 minutes for the patency or the size of the arteries to go back to normal, so that you can have an accurate test. So you can test that accurately. So that's a big one. Now, people who have low blood pressure, there's a product from Standard Process that works like a dream for it, and it's called Drenamin. I happen to have low blood pressure, and Drenamin is really what keeps me really balanced as far as my blood pressure and how I feel. So a lot of times, especially lately, they used to give like hydrochlorothiazide. It worked really, really, really well. And then I think the patent probably ran out and all these other pharmaceutical companies jumped on board and started adding stuff. So now it's not unusual to have somebody come in that's on 3 different blood pressure meds and their blood pressure is still high. It's because it's not working. So lifestyle changes. Doing some walking is important. Water is huge. I tell people a liter per 50 pounds or fraction thereof. Amy, I know we've talked in the past, and another rule of thumb is an ounce per body weight, but sometimes people get totally overwhelmed. So if you're 150 pounds, drink 3 liters of water, generally speaking. Obviously, if you have some other health issue going on, I don't have, well, Dr. Jen said on a podcast, and I'm like, I get that, but you also have other healthcare concerns that can come into play, right?
Right.
So what we're going through right now too is when I was in school, 150/90 was stage 1 hypertension. Okay, we didn't even medicate for that. And now they're medicating, they're like, oh, you're 129/82, you've got high blood pressure. And I'm like, no, you don't. And I'm also seeing a group of older people who are getting dizzy, they're lethargic, they can't get out of bed, they go to stand up, they fall over, they break a hip because their blood pressure is too low. As we age, our arteries are supposed to harden to a certain degree. It keeps our blood pressure up to a normal level, okay? Mm-hmm. So obviously, too hard, we're gonna have issues. It's just like anything else. I feel like it's, what is that? This porridge is too hot and this porridge is too cold. Like there has to be a balance there, right? Yeah, exactly. So normal blood pressure is 120/80. Elevated, I would say, they're calling stage 1 hypertension now 130/80 to 89.
Oh my God. I didn't know.
And I'm like, when I was
lowered
in
it that
school,
much.
it was 150/95, I want to say, was stage 1 hypertension.
Wow.
So they've lowered it quite a bit. So patients are coming in like, I have high blood pressure. I'm 132/85. And I'm like, you don't have high blood pressure. Okay. So pay attention to it. But I have had people in the 200s, which I'm not going to say is super safe. And it's for each individual, and then also well over 100 on the diastolic, which is a little bit too high. So minerals, electrolytes, stuff like that can help tremendously. Getting the water up, decreasing the coffee can also make a difference. It could be something that you're eating. If you're eating foods that are high in sodium, like canned soup, that can also have so much sodium in it that you're missing all the other minerals to balance it out. I have patients that literally will do Himalayan salt in their water and say, oh my gosh, my blood pressure came down, because they've been told that salt increases blood pressure. And that's not the case. It can if you're sodium sensitive or salt sensitive, but the average person is not salt sensitive.
So how does somebody know they're salt sensitive?
Well, they'll have symptoms of like increased thirst, swelling in their feet or hands, headaches sometimes, and a rise in blood pressure. But most people aren't salt sensitive. And the way to get over that basically is to increase the potassium. That's really what the medical physiology books talk about. So really the salt sensitivity is more of just you've overloaded your body with sodium, and it's not the right type of sodium. Sodium chloride is not necessarily going to help most people. So that's why people are looking into electrolytes where they're doing sodium, they're doing potassium with it and some magnesium, and there's other things. And that's why doing some of the salts like the Himalayan salt or Redmond's real salt can be really helpful for a lot of people. They're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better because those minerals help open these windows based on electrical charges basically in the cells. So it helps open these fenestrations, these windows, to allow the electrolytes, the fluid, to get into the cells, and then those cells can function better. So really, it's adding potassium can be helpful with that. And once again, if I go out to eat and there's MSG and sodium and all the other stuff that makes all those foods taste good, I'm gonna get home and I'm gonna feel like a puffer fish, right? My feet are gonna be swollen, I feel terrible. But if I use Himalayan salt, I don't have that problem. So is it just the salt, or is it all the other, junk that's being put in some of these foods that we're eating and not realizing that MSG doesn't have to be labeled MSG unless it's 97% pure MSG or higher. It can be labeled, natural flavors. It can be labeled a million different things. Autolyzed yeast extract, all these different names for MSG, which is an excitotoxin that actually excites our brain cells till they die. But that's another story for another day. So,
oh my God, how disturbing does that
yeah.
Yeah.
So minerals are great. Potassium is great. Now, this is the other thing I get a lot of times is my friend said, I shouldn't take potassium. It's hard on your heart. Yes and no. So potassium chloride is the potassium that is given at the pharmacy for a lot of people who are taking different sorts of pharmaceuticals, including blood pressure meds that are not potassium sparing. It will dump the potassium too fast, so they take potassium chloride. Potassium chloride can be extremely hard on the heart. That is a pharmaceutical form of potassium, okay? But I usually use potassium gluconate, sometimes potassium aspartate, just a couple of different forms of it. And I've never had a problem. They're standardized 99 milligrams, and I've often taken 10 of them if I've had a high sodium rich food, like meal, and I'll come home and take 10 of them. And because it's potassium, it's water soluble, my kidneys are going to dump anything extra that it doesn't need. But if I've done that much salt, then usually, like if I go to Mexican or something, all bets are off. I'm having the chips, I'm having the salt, which is terrible table salt, right? So I'll come home and have potassium, and I don't wake up like a puffer fish.
See, and most people don't know that. And I love that there's like an easy mitigation strategy for when you do go have that meal and indulge, and you've consumed a ton of sodium. Japanese is one of my favorite kinds of food, and the soy sauce and all the salt that they cook everything in, just high sodium. So to just do something simple like that to offset it so that you're not, all puffed out like puffer fish, like you said.
Well, and it's not your get out of jail free card. I'm not telling people, hey, go out and eat this stuff every day and then just add the potassium
God,
or
no.
add whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, sometimes it happens. Sometimes you have real life. Sometimes there's a graduation and this is what's being served. You know what I mean? Like, it happens. So in that case, don't just sit there and do nothing. Come up with a solution and figure it out. But I've had too many elderly patients coming in to see me after falls because they were lightheaded, and once they stand up, they feel like they're going to pass out. And I start inquiring about the blood pressure meds that they're on, and potentially they're taking too many. And the other thing is, it's not cumulative either. Like my aunt will have high blood pressure. We're talking aneurysm high once or twice a month, and she can feel the symptoms coming on. So she takes a half of a blood pressure pill that, like when she's starting to feel it, and it brings it right back down. She doesn't take it every day. If she took it every day, she'd never get out of bed. She would never have any energy to get out of bed. So she only takes it when she feels the symptoms. Now, am I advocating for that? No, but I'm just telling people because they think that they have to take it every single day, and some people may, but if she did that, her blood pressure would be too low that she'd feel terrible all of the time.
Wow.
So she has decided to take her pharmaceuticals the way she chooses to take it, and so far it's worked out pretty well for her.
Yeah, I have people in my family that are on, 2 blood pressure medications, used to be 3 or 1, but for like decades. And it's hard for me to accept that in a sense for myself, because I I worry about, it's funny you say that the blood pressure is regulated by the kidneys. And the first thing I think is the kidneys are having to process these blood pressure medications. So taking them every day for 30 years, whatever, it's like, what's the long-term effect of this? It's kind of frightening to think about.
Well, and blood pressure really is just a symptom letting you know that there's something wrong with the body. There's something wrong. The homeostasis isn't there. The balance isn't there.
Yeah.
So what is it? So instead of going, here, shut up and let me shove this pill in you. And don't get me wrong, there's a time in life or death situations, you don't want the blood pressure so high that the person, blows a blood vessel and ends up with an aneurysm. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like if you're living on a pharmaceutical, if you're living on something like that, generally you're missing something.
Yep.
You're missing what the body's trying to tell you. So, well, I don't want to stop drinking my coffee. Okay, well then I guess you got to live on the blood pressure meds and look up those side effects. Look up the long-term side effects of that. So
yeah, yep.
Yeah. Sometimes you won't find that you like that so much, or you find out later like, oh, that one caused cancer and I probably shouldn't have taken it because after a decade of research, we're now going to release this information. You know what I mean? And then it's, it's all choices that we make. So once again, just watching that blood pressure and deciding what's best and how you're going to handle your food situation and what foods you're eating and how much water you're drinking and exercise and healthy weight, but really just take care of those kidneys and they'll definitely take care of you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Jen. This was very informative as always. Appreciate your knowledge and wisdom. If you haven't joined our school community before, I'll put the link in the show notes below. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye. That wraps up another episode of Speaking Holistically. Thank you for listening. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration to take charge of your health. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, be sure and join the Speaking Holistically school community by clicking the link in the show notes. There, you'll get access to daily podcast episodes, weekly live Q&As, educational content, and so much more. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, be well, stay curious, and keep speaking holistically.